Yes,
anyway, I was in the back talking to somebody about buying a guitar. So the jam went ahead and started without my being in the room. Well, whenever George Rice would come in, he was really often the only good singer.
Yeah.
And
Let's stop here for just a second, Clyde, so we can sort of set the scenario what we're talking about here.
okay.
We're talking about the Friday night jam that we used to have at the Bluegrass Center on Hendersonville Road in Asheville.
Right.
Yeah, and there was a lot of the local and sometimes very far away guests would come by too, and
Yep,
there was
exactly.
great memories from those days.
Toward the last year, I also had a bluegrass gospel jam on Tuesday night, but the Friday one was right on through, and Robert would be there, and we'd have, I can't remember his name, a nice man that looked sort of like Robert, built about like him, kind of a little bit heavy set, with gray hair, about the same age, who carried a belt with every chromatic harmonica. Now normally, normally I don't see a harmonica, which they call a French harp, of being a good bluegrass instrument, but he added to it, and he was a nice. His name was Stuart somebody.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yep.
He was still a voice of sanity in a way.
Oh, what now?
He was like a voice of sanity. Still, he could play the melody real well.
Yep. And there was Robert.
Yeah.
Who could play anything anybody played.
Yeah.
He was a little bit pre-bluegrass, a little bit pre-Monroe.
Yep.
But still a very good musician.
Yes.
That fit in.
Yep. He played those fiddle tunes beautifully. I mean, just.
Yep. Sure did.
I got.
And let's see now. And Carl Chandler was there during the last couple of years. Carl was the official banjo player of Ralph's group, but anybody who wanted to join in was welcome that played, and so we got along fine. But unfortunately, Carl got a really bad case of arthritis. What's that? Crippling arthritis.
Yep.
His hands.
Rheumatoid.
And couldn't play banjo anymore, and he sort of struggled along on a dobro. His son, Timmy, who had started playing at about 12 during the original jams, ended up playing banjo and played with a gospel group called the Primitive Quartet for a while. And he wasn't usually at the jams, but he came around every now and then.
Oh yeah, I know Tim and Charlie and Nick and all of them boys. They're all very good musicians,
Nick and let's see. Oh, there was a guy named, what was his name? Brian, not Brian Sutton, but another guy that ended up playing kind of more Southern gospel, who also played, I think he played bass.
Charlie Chandler.
What was his name?
Charlie Chandler. Nick's brother, Charlie.
Well, he did play, he played a lot with the Primitives, but he didn't come to the jam very much, hardly at all. He ended up teaching there a little bit toward the end of it. But, no, this was a different guy. I don't remember his name. And then there was a guy named, actually, Chris Sharp played fiddle for them for a very short while, and then became less interested in doing that. And they had another fiddler that didn't have too much experience and quit too. So most of the time that band had Nick and George Buckner and that guy that played bass. I don't remember who else they had.
Greg Eubanks.
Randy,
Randy.
Randy.
It's probably Greg Eubanks, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was it, Greg Eubanks. You're right.
I'm still in touch with all these guys, on on Facebook. I've known them since they were like 16,
And then
Lawrence, and Dilly.
Oh yeah, and Lawrence too. Yep, that's right. And he had an identical twin brother who didn't play that I got to know. I got to know on Facebook a little.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, there was Lawrence who still plays. Yeah. And has this sort of jazzy kind of bluegrass.
Yeah.
With a lot of who's the gypsy guy?
Django Reinhardt or something.
Yeah, puts a lot of his licks in.
Yeah.
And he's still around. And there's another guy, a good lead guitar player named Caleb Smith. And Caleb also is an instrument craftsman and makes guitars.
Yeah, I know.
You know Caleb?
Yeah.
Okay. And of course Marc Pruett.
Yeah. Well, there's
Marc.
he's one of the old school guys.
He's now become older. I met him first when he was 18, and it just started. I'd already moved up north, and I came back down to visit my dad in Asheville, and he just started playing with Ralph and them. Just barely started. Well, he could play some songs. I mean, he obviously was going to be a good banjo player, and that was Marc. And then I think he had a brother who did gospel music. I think became a preacher. Mac, I think, a name similar to Marc.
You remember the Marc Pruett band from back in the mid '80s when they had that gig at Bill Stanley's Barbecue in Bluegrass?
Oh yeah.
And what a powerful band that was. I mean, they're so tight and I mean, wow.
Yep.
And I saw Mike Hunter here back in September. The Nashville scene. I tell you what, he went for years and didn't play, but he certainly plays now. You know, as good as ever. Yeah, he's really good.
Well, you've been more in touch with him than I have, actually. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, he was good.
And Steve Sutton, rest in peace. You know.
Yeah, Brian Sutton.
No, not Brian. No, Brian wouldn't have been even allowed in the bar back then.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, you played with Brian, right?
Yeah, but back in those days, I don't think. Well, maybe he could. Yeah, no, he was not on the school night. You know.
Yeah.
Back in those days. And we're talking like '86, I guess.
Yeah. They've been around then.
No, but Steve Sutton played guitar.
Yeah, he ended up buying a Martin from me, but ended up playing something different later.
Okay. He was a great musician.
Oh, yeah.
Any kind of stringed instrument, I guess.
Yep.
I saw him play or heard him play banjo and guitar, and it was.
I didn't know he played banjo. Yeah.
Oh, Steve Sutton played banjo with Jimmy Martin.
Oh, Steve Sutton, yeah. Yeah, he died. You know he died?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was a really good banjo player, actually.
Yeah, man. He's got that Crow inspired.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Steve. I saw him play. I went out to the recreation park, and there's a little building there, and he played there one night when he was just learning. I talked to him back then, but he was always one of the most proficient players at Bill Stanley's, and I guess he played a lot. See, I've been away from it since the store closed in '97. I haven't been that active in being out and around. I haven't been really sick until the more recent years, but it's been coming on. It wasn't what stopped me. It was a bunch of different things, but anyway, I'm all fired up now, but in what I can do, but left I can do. But anyway, there was Steve, and I don't know the mandolin player that plays in that Balsam Range group they have now, but they're getting some exposure now with that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Marc has always been one of the top players in my book.
Yep.
And Steve Sutton too. The whole Arvil Freeman is a fine fiddle man too, you know.
Oh yeah, there's a story I heard about him, and I don't doubt this is true. He knew, he had some sort of contact with the original, what you could call the original bluegrass fiddler. Well,
Chubby?
Even before Chubby. Chubby was, I guess, more of an out-and-out bluegrass fiddler, but
well, Art Wooten.
No, even before him, Fiddlin' Arthur Smith. Not to be confused with Arthur Guitarby.
Right,
Smith.
right.
But he, according to Ralph Lewis, I asked him one time who first started doing that smooth flow bluegrass fiddle, which was different from the old time fiddle, which was sawing back and forth all the time.
Yeah.
You know, using slurs, which would cause, they didn't use that term, but you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, slide.
They called it bow fiddling. Yeah. But Arthur, he said, was the first one to do that he knew of, and he played with those two brothers on the Opry.
Yeah, the fruit jar drinkers, Kirk and
Yep. And
the McGee brothers.
Yep. And his son played guitar with him some, and Arvil knew his son.
Yeah.
And
do you remember? Do you remember that he came to the store, Arthur Smith's son?
Gosh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, he came there with Benny Sims one time.
I wish I'd known who he was. Well, you know, I have my head buried somewhere else at the time.
Probably in some banjo practice that nobody could interfere with, no matter what.
Probably right. Probably right on that. But at any rate, I'm sorry I missed him.
No, but if you listen to some of his, there is some stuff on video or on YouTube. It's just outstanding. It's shockingly good, and sort of ahead of its time in many ways.
Oh, you're talking about Arthur?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Well, what was his son's name? I can't remember that either. Anyway, whatever it was, he went out one afternoon to visit Arvil Freeman, and they got to doing the old tunes, you know. And the story I got was they played for several hours and never got out of the key of D. Which gives you an idea of how wide the repertoire was. But
they probably had some ancient tones in there, probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whatever they were. But that's anyway. Arvil had lung cancer, and I guess he beat it. Thank God. Because
well, I'm glad to hear that.
He's still healthy. Yeah. I got to see Ralph shortly before he passed away.
Ralph Lewis.
Ralph Lewis, yeah. They had a get together down there in Madison County, honoring Ralph, and I was there. Have you heard Marc Kirkendall's last couple of records?
Oh yeah.
I really like that.
Oh, with Bobby Hicks.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's some of the bluegrass playingest people out there today.
Yep. Yeah, I'd say offhand. Of course, Charlene would have me make her dad be an exception to this. And he was a wonderful singer.
Yeah.
But one could argue that Marc Kirkendall is really the best bluegrass singer to come from the Asheville area. I think you could argue that. And he learned a lot from Charlene's dad too, about phrasing and things like that.
Oh yeah, I mean there's some killer singers, and Marc, I love his singing. He played a few gigs with him here this or last year. Bobby Hicks.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
you know, I've known both of them for over 30 years now. So.
Yep. And their new banjo player.
Oh,
well,
Seth.
I don't know if it's their banjo player, but he's recorded with them.
You
played with them.
You mean Seth Rhinehart?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's good too. He is my good buddy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's terrific too.
Oh yeah, and you know, he's one of these people. He's got an old soul, you know.
What's that now?
He's got an old soul, you know, the saying.
Oh yeah.
You know, he's interested in things that most people are not. But you know, just like.
And he plays with another younger group too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Seth is a soulmate of mine.
I wish you could have been at Ronnie Smith's party. They were both there picking, both George and Seth, two absolutely super banjo players.
Oh yeah. Oh, man.
Have you heard George lately?
Yeah, only on video, but you know he's as solid as he. I mean, George was amazing when I knew him. He was probably, well, like the other boys around 16, I believe. Yeah, they were good. They were good back then. I mean, they had it already. They got that something that most people never got, but they.
It happened all of a sudden.
Yeah, Chris and Lawrence and of course Eubanks and.
But you got to hear those recordings that Chris Sharp made with George on them.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll raise the hair right off the back of
Oh,
your
I
head.
know. It's as good as everything. Anything Earl did, you know.
Yep, right up there.
I remember. You remember,
true.
Clyde?
Yeah.
There's this really funny story. I don't know, but you remember that Chris, or I don't know if Chris went, but there was George Buckner and somebody went down to. They lived down there in Bowling Springs.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, so when they were leaving, or somebody was slamming a door. It was Horace Scruggs. He when he slammed his car door, it created a tone that only a Scruggs. It could come from the Scruggs car, or maybe it was Earl himself. I can't remember, but there was something where he connected like being a Scruggs to creating this magic tone in the car door slamming. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. Well, let's see. Now, there was another fiddler that lived not far from where Charlene and I lived for a while, who's passed away maybe 6 or 8 years ago, named Paul Crouch.
Oh yeah. Oh, I knew Paul. Yeah.
Okay. And he played with the Stanleys, I think, at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of that, though.
I saw him play.
Yeah. And, okay, then let's see, right around Asheville. There were several others that weren't quite bluegrass. There was a fellow that won the guitar in the drawing, who passed away.
Yeah, and we call him the Jimmy Rogers guy. So he actually had a tie to Jimmy Rogers. Do you remember anything about that?
The guy that sang. There's a guy that sang Jimmy Rogers style, very much like Jimmy Rogers.
Yeah.
And there's another elderly guy. Well, I guess they were both fairly elderly.
Yeah.
That at the time.
Yeah.
That played Carter Family. Everything he knew was Carter Family.
Yeah.
And he played that. He was one of the first to pass away that came to the jam.
Yep. I tried to identify this one guy who apparently met Jimmy Rogers as a child. Not when Jimmy was working for the railroad.
Oh yeah. Well, no, he wasn't a musician, but the fellow that worked for him alive.
Yeah.
But a wonderful man.
Yeah, I remember him, and you know, he was probably, he must have been in his early or late 80s back then, I would say.
Yeah, that was Art Huntley, OTT Art Huntley, and he had actually seen Jimmy Rogers sitting on the steps outside the railroad station, and also at the Langreen Hotel, I think. No, it was the railroad station.
Yeah.
Playing.
I know. I seem to remember he said the Battery Park Hotel
That might have been
in
it,
Asheville. Yeah.
Okay, that might have been
But
it.
either way, you know, it's just it gave me chill bumps just to hear that connection to as far back as Rogers, and to this day I feel the same way. Like, wow, I met somebody who saw Jimmy Rogers. It's pretty powerful.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, to some people. Of course, most people would think we were crazy even talking about it.
Well, there was a little old lady that came in the store that loved Jimmy Rogers' music, and I guess he was popular and on the radio when she was a young woman, and she wondered if I had any Jimmy Rogers records. I said, yeah, we got a couple of them over there, and I played one for her, and it had been remastered, you know, and it sounded a lot more like a modern recording. And she said, that's not Jimmy Rogers. That doesn't sound anything like like those songs used to sound. Of course, she was used to hearing it the way it came over the radio back in the 20s and 30s.
Oh, man, that's the story. Wow.
But they were Jimmy Rogers too.
You know, I went on a trip